And as President Trump gets ready to deliver his very first State of the Union in a little over 24 hours, Sean Spicer is weighing in on the administration's first-year achievements. And One America's Trey Yingst caught up with Spicer and has this report from D.C.
Sean, I want to thank you for joining us today on One America News. I have a number of questions for you, ranging from the president's first year in office to some more recent headlines this week. But first, I'd like to ask you about the pressure the RNC has received this week regarding the former finance chair, Steve Wynn, who's been accused of sexual assault. Amid these allegations, do you believe the RNC should return or donate the money given to them by Mr. Wynn?
Yeah, I do. Look, I think we should have one standard that says these kind of allegations should be taken seriously. And I think we made a pretty big deal out of the Democrats when they had donors, but I think we should live up to a higher standard. And so I do believe in due process, and Mr. Wynn has said that he isn't, these charges are not true. But at the same time, I think that until that is resolved, that the committee should give the money back.
Moving forward, I want to ask you about a few other headlines from this past week and really this past month, and then get into a little bit about your book, and then additionally some questions moving forward about your future. I'd like to start off, though, asking about your time in the administration. You were around for a number of critical decisions by the president. I imagine you go through a lot of those as you're putting together a book. I want to ask you about a story last week, though, that came out in the New York Times about the president's desire to fire Robert Mueller. During your time as press secretary, did the president ever express a desire to fire Robert Mueller?
No.
Whenever you're thinking back on your time in the administration, is there a moment that stands out to you as sort of the most critical moment, in your mind, the most important of the first year of the Trump administration?
I think there's several, but they're in different. I mean, there's personal moments, there's historical moments, and there's sort of like profound moments. Whether it's, being part of the joint address, the first one last year that we're coming up on this eve of, where you're given a front row seat to history and watching how things get made and how people react. His first foreign trip. There's a lot of those historical moments that I look back on. I don't sort of, I have not really sat down and weighted them as far as which one made, was the most. But there were a lot of really amazing moments. Earlier
this month, in an interview, you said at times you screwed up as press secretary.
Sure.
How'd you screw up? Is there a few instances of times that stand out to you?
Well, first, you can pre-order the book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, so I'll walk through a lot of that, and that's part of what why I wanted to write a book. It was more to, I think a lot of people saw one aspect of things, which is just what life looked like on the other side of a podium, and I think there's a lot of things that go into a lot of those decisions, a lot of weight that you carry, and a lot of intensity that is part of that job, and I think my goal is to give readers an understanding of what really happened behind the scenes and the things that happened. But there were plenty of times that I, didn't use the right example, or went out too quick, or probably could have put together a more comprehensive plan. One of the points that I make early on is I was carrying two jobs. I did it multiple times, where I was both White House press secretary, White House communications director. I think that was a mistake. I think that I should have, and I'm not saying it was a mistake that I was complicit in. But I think that the weight of the White House and the duty to execute on what the president wanted done should have been one that we recognized the weight of that job and really gotten somebody in there earlier.
I'd like to talk about the larger Russia probe while we're discussing the first year of the administration. Obviously, this has been something, and you hear this from senior administration officials a lot, that they feel it distracted from some of the achievements of the president in the first year. Do you feel that it got in the way of being able to execute your job as press secretary?
Well, sure, in the sense that I think there were plenty of times when some one-off story would disrupt 2 or 3 or 5 days of good press of a positive impact that something the president was doing had. And in many cases, I'm not sure that there was substantial weight behind a story that necessitated the amount of coverage that it got. So every little crumb that had to do with Russia became a national story and undermined, I think, a broader message of an agenda that was being enacted to make the country better.
You've interviewed with the special counsel. Do you think Robert Mueller will be fair to President Trump?
I have no reason to believe that Robert Mueller would not be fair to the president. He's got a solid reputation. I think there's a lot of concern about some of the activity that's gone on between some of the agents that have been in the past. I think there's some donations that people have made. But I think we all have to reserve judgment and let him do his job.
We can use your help. Call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call today.